Welcome back to the Adaptive Athlete Podcast, the space for hearing stories of adaptive athletes in the CrossFit space and beyond. I'm your host, Matt Hotho. On today's episode, we're talking with Debbie O'Connell. Debbie is an adaptive athlete based out of the United Kingdom, and while she does adaptive CrossFit and has been at the Games in 2024 and is returning to the Games in 2025, she's also a para sprinter, sprinting in the 100, 200, and 400 meters at Worlds and European and National Championships. She took second at the Adaptive CrossFit Games in 2024, and we're going to talk all about her transition into a competitive CrossFit, her experiences at the Games, and her goals moving forward. Check it out. Welcome back to another episode of the Adaptive Athlete Podcast. I'm here with Debbie O'Connell. Debbie, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm very good. Thank you.
How has your training been going in the last year? We've got about 5 weeks until the CrossFit Games. What have you been working on or not working on?
So I've had a little bit of time out. So we just some personal stuff came up. So I've had about 3 weeks off training. This week's been my first week back into sort of hard hitting pre-games training, and now we've hit the end of the week, and I'm pretty exhausted to be fair. So just trying to hit all those all the skills really. I think it's just trying to get round them all. There's just so many. By the time you've finished thinking that you're actually getting a little bit better at one skill, you go back to the one you started with, and actually you feel like you're still rubbish at everything.
Yes. Did you ever see that list that the World Fitness Project put out where they listed like every possible movement that could show up in one of their events? It was like 3 pages long, and there was a half page devoted just to variations on a burpee. And it was like, oh my gosh. It's you think about all the skills that could come up in a competition, and it's overwhelming.
Absolutely. And then you start to list which ones are your weaknesses, and then you realize that you've got more weaknesses than strengths. Yes.
I had a mentor once tell me your fully exploited strengths are much better than your marginally improved weaknesses. And I think that works in leadership, but I don't think it works in CrossFit.
No.
Yeah.
It's a wide open hole.
Yes. So if you don't mind sharing, what's one or two things that you've been working on?
So we've been working a lot more on barbell cycling.
Okay.
Because obviously it's something that comes up every year. And certainly from a 1 point element, it's probably one of the most fatiguing, just depending on what type of barbell cycling it is. So we've been doing a lot of work on barbell cycling, and then just some of the high end skills which keep cropping in just to test us. But toes to bar, toes to ring, those sorts of skills is what we've been primarily working on.
Yeah.
And just building strength for those skills, because it's not a case of just keep throwing yourself at the skill. You've got to build the strength to have the strength to even attempt the skill. So that's right.
And for our listeners, you're upper 1 point. So,
yes.
So when you do something like a toes to bar or a toes to ring, you can only touch the rig or the ring with one arm.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you talk about like gaining more strength there, you're not just talking about in your shoulder, you're talking about like also in your core and probably in your whole midline, so that you can really use that a lot more. Whereas the able-bodied athlete might focus more on pulling back on the bar and generating power in their lats. Do you have to focus on more muscles?
Yeah. I mean, for me specifically, I have no function and no muscular engagement on my left-hand side at all. So it means that it's very difficult for me to create tension. So when you think about that sort of kipping type movement and creating those sort of arches, and it's incredibly difficult for me to create those shapes. So we have to try and recruit other muscles within my back and my core and my hip flexors to try and achieve those shapes. And I guess because I sprint as well, my hamstrings are always very tight. So when it comes to any form of gymnastic movement, it's sort of like, which is the cheap way to get my feet up there.
The cheap way to get your feet up there. I like that way of describing it. Okay, so you're upper 1 point. So you weren't always upper 1 point though. So what's your story? Kind of what happened that made you an adaptive athlete?
So I was in the British Army, and my role involved riding horses. It's a ceremonial unit. And And there was an accident at work one day. I was thrown from my horse, and during that accident, it damaged some of the nerves in my shoulder. So that was in 2015, late 2015. So then what happened is it meant that from then onwards, I've not really been able to use my left arm efficiently. And so, yeah, it meant just trying to adapt and trying to change the way that I did things after the accident. So it took some years to sort of find myself back into sport again.
Yeah. So it was kind of like, would you describe it as like a wilderness period where you were trying to find out like what it looked like to be athletic after the accident?
Yeah, absolutely. I think because it was, and I guess a lot of people find this who have an accident that leads to their injury or their disability. I think you go through this period of time where you don't really want to accept it, but you don't know how things are going to look moving forward. And it's very easy to be like, oh, well, I'll never do this again. I'll never do that again. And I just knew that I wanted to learn to run again, because running is what I'd always enjoyed, what I'd loved doing. Okay. So I wanted to learn to run again, and that's how I moved forward. That was my first start back into sport.
So you always liked running. So before your accident, you were athletic, and it was just a matter of post-accident figuring out what it meant to rediscover being an athlete.
Yeah. So in the army, I was also a physical training instructor. So we did a lot of PT based exercise, a lot of circuit work, a lot of running. And yeah, once I couldn't really move and swing my arm, I was like, I don't know how this works. I'm just off balance, can't really move very well. So it was just finding a way back to that, because it was the impact on my mental health, from the 2 points of view. The one, feeling like I couldn't train and couldn't exercise, and the importance that had in my life, and then combined with it compounded how I felt about myself post accident.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting hearing you share that, because to quote Lady Gaga, I was born this way. My disability is something that I've always had since birth, but I still had a moment like in my early 30s, I think, when my family was growing up and I had kids that wanted to play outside, and I had that sort of mental crisis of just kind of like, wait a second, if I don't take care of myself, I'm not going to be able to throw a football with my kids, or, kind of do all the activities that I want to do with my kids. Let alone be available to my partner too, as, a helpful person around the house and that kind of stuff. So I was like, I'm going to, dive into fitness and discover for the first time what it means to be a fit person. But it seemed, and that's just it's a similar and a different mindset, right? There's an inflection point in my life that I can remember where it was like, okay, I got to make a change. And it seems like for you after the accident, there was within 3 years an inflection point of, hold on, I've got to figure out what this looks like for me too.
Absolutely. I think it was you hit that stagnant period, I think, and you think, well, I've got to stop feeling sorry for myself now and actually do something about it, because no one's going to change it for you. You have to change it for yourself. Yeah.
And your situation, you're right. Your situation isn't going to change if you just sit there feeling sorry for yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. So as you got into running, what kind of running were you doing?
So sprinting. So I applied to the Invictus Games I think I applied in 2017, and then decided I actually wasn't quite ready. I hadn't quite been discharged from the military yet, and decided I wasn't ready. So I reapplied in 2018, and had they call them camps. They effectively held like group sessions where they, along with para-athletes, so they used Paralympic coaches in different areas, and then para-athletes that were already adapted to help come and show us guys how to potentially adapt what we needed and wanted to do in order to achieve what we wanted. So they taught me to sprint. I'd never sprinted before. I'd only ever ran. And I was like, I used to run like 8 miles. How hard can 100 meters be? It was the longest distance I think I've ever had to run.
Yeah. And so tell me some of the differences there in kind of learning to be a runner versus a sprinter.
It's just that maximum speed, maximum effort. It's, I guess, the same as we would recognize in CrossFit as a max lift. you give absolutely everything. And then it's amazing how exhausting it is and how far 100 meters can feel when you're giving your absolute maximum and not holding anything back. And just the mechanics, and there's no leeway in 100 meters. You can't, there's no room for mistakes or for error if you want to compete. But it was just that initial shock to the system. I was like, how hard can 100 meters be? But when then everyone's flying past you, you're like, oh, that's why it's hard.
It's that hard. Yeah. So it is like you were saying, like a max lift where probably your training sometimes looks like 100 meters, but your training isn't just running 100 meters over and over and over again. Your training involves a lot of different modalities and movements to kind of prime your body for this exertion of a lot of energy all at once.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it depends. So winter training, we work a lot on strength and just building. I guess it would be building the sort of cardio endurance, your strength endurance. So we spent a lot of time doing that over winter, and then coming into summer, it gets a bit tricky coming into summer because a lot of, particularly for the UK, it's the only time that we have nice weather. So potentially nice weather. So there is only competitions for sprinting outdoors. They start in March and they finish in sort of the end of September. So it means that that's our competition period. So it's very difficult to train that period other than just honing in on skill, same as CrossFit. The skills of being able to get out of the blocks on time, your reaction times become very important.
Mm-hmm. So when you're sprinting, I've noticed in pictures, you've got your left arm like held in with a sling kind of very close to your body, very close to your center of gravity. Is that a requirement of the classification that you're in when you sprint? Do you have to have your arm held in like that?
No, it's not. So in sprinting, there isn't a distinction between how much of your arm you can use. You're effectively just classified as an upper athlete, it would be. So some girls can use their whole arm, swing their whole arm. Some girls with amputation will use a blade. But for me, I don't have the control of my arm in order to have it loose. It would just be sort of flapping around.
Okay.
Which is why I have my arm held close. And a couple of the other girls use a different sling where it's more like, well, you will have seen people in them when they've like broke their arm and it comes across their body. But again, for me, because I can't control at my elbow, it sort of takes my elbow with it. So best way for me is just to keep it sort of trapped out of the way.
So if we were to describe it for somebody on audio, not on video, can you lift your hand above your head?
My left hand?
Yes.
I can only lift my left hand above my head if it's held on to something. So I have to lift it with my right hand and then hold on to something.
And then hold it. Okay. It can't support itself. It'll just fall back down.
Yes.
Okay. And then if I were to say, like, tuck your elbow into your side, can you pull that elbow into your side?
Not if my arm is down and loose. So the problem I have is bending at my elbow.
Okay.
So if my arm is just down by its side, I wear a brace the rest of the time that keeps my arm at 90 degrees so that I can use my hand. But if my arm's down by its side, I can pin at my side a little bit, yes.
Okay.
But I can't do that against any form of restriction. So if momentum was to take over, for example, I can't pull it in.
i.e. running a 100.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. So then when you're running a 100 and you've got that arm tucked in that brace that you use, what does it do to your balance and your ability to kind of run?
It definitely has an impact. So we had to play around a lot with how I start the race because a lot of people know traditionally sprinters, they start in the blocks, they crouch down on the floor, put their hands down on the floor. And then come up into that step position where they stick the bum in the air and then they go on the gun from there. So I can physically come down into that position and hold myself on one arm. But what happens is when I then set off is my body starts to, with the momentum, it starts to corkscrew me back into the ground. So my left shoulder will drop towards the ground, which pulls me into the ground. So I do now what we call a stand-in start. So I still use the blocks, feet on the blocks, and then I crouch down, but I'm in a stud position, and then I set off. So we've had to do a lot of work on counterbalance. So inevitably, when I set off, I do drift towards the left-hand side because the right-hand side of my body is stronger because it's got momentum for my right arm. But I think maybe because I've always sprinted this way, I've always learnt this way, so I don't know any different. So I guess I don't have a comparison. So I guess
you probably have a little bit of comparison when you ran before your accident, right? Just any kind of little bit of running you did then, kind of the chops you would do with your arms, losing one arm in the chop.
Definitely running wise, when I first started to run, and before I sort of found the sling to help me, then I found it very difficult because you swing to one side and it's like your body starts to gain this momentum that you suddenly can't control. So you sort of have to slow down or stop, and then go again. But I think since I've started sprinting, it's biomechanically, it's just very different to running. The way that you hold yourself a lot more rigid. So I think it's a lot more core strength required.
That makes sense. When you said too in 2022 you were running a 400 for a little while, but did you enjoy the 400 more than the 100, or did you stop the 400 when you started training CrossFit?
Oh, that's a loaded question because nobody who runs 400 likes 400.
That's fair. That's true. Yeah.
Because it's a pretty disgusting distance. But I was good at the 400 because my start is slow, because it takes about my third stride to get my momentum because I can't drive with my other arm. So I needed the extra distance to really catch everybody on the track. So the hundreds, because it is all power from the start, particularly when I first started sprinting, I was a lot lighter, not quite as muscular, not quite as strong. So I sort of get left behind a little bit. But it's been more conducive since I started CrossFit training. Coming down to the 100 has definitely matches with my CrossFit training much better.
Yeah, your CrossFit training definitely would bleed over into your training for your 100.
Yes,
and vice versa.
I mean, the strength side of things, that explosiveness, all of that definitely does. The parts that don't, to the fact that it would take me less than 14 seconds to run a 100, and the minimum amount of time that you do a CrossFit workout is probably 3 minutes.
That's true.
So there's a little bit of that which sort of clashes a little bit when we're in prime competition for athletics, for sprinting. We have to dial that back a little bit for CrossFit training, but otherwise it matches up fairly well.
So let's talk about your transition into CrossFit. So how did you discover CrossFit? When was it in 2022 when you were kind of getting into sprinting and getting into running more, or was it before or after that? It
was in 2022. I'd never heard of CrossFit before, but I had a bit of a hamstring niggle. So I went to see somebody about that, and they were based inside of a CrossFit gym. So that person's now my coach, and I asked her to coach me specifically for athletics. She looks after a lot of people, sports injuries, but then she also looks after people that have potentially had a stroke and want to get back into sport or just back into daily life. So she works a lot with people with nerve damage, neurological damage. So I felt that she was well suited to helping me sort of get to my top end of sprinting. So I asked her to start training me, coaching me. And I think probably, as we'll all know now, as any CrossFitter, because she also did CrossFit, a lot of my training, my sprint training, started to look like CrossFit training.
Right.
And was done in the CrossFit gym. And then she just said to me, I think it was 2021, she might have said to me, "Oh, I'm doing the Open this year. Why don't you just come and try it out?" So I went down there just for the community aspect of it and tried out the Open, and enjoyed it more than I should have done, really. And then from there, I just sort of dabbled a little bit more in CrossFit, but I didn't start really doing any actual CrossFit training until it would have been December 23, I think, when I actually started doing any actual CrossFit training. I wasn't allowed before then because she said it didn't match with my 400-meter training.
That's fair. And she's the coach, so whatever she says has to go. So yeah, December 23 seems like it was sort of an inflection point for a lot of people, because that's where it became clear that CrossFit was going to pass off the adaptive element of their games to wheel wad. And then the signups got a lot more people signed up for the Open that year through wheel wad and got to get classified and kind of do their first CrossFit season as an adaptive athlete in 2024.
Yes. Yeah, I think it probably drew a lot of people just knowing that there was going to be the classification split down. So I think that it was definitely a huge factor for me, because I'd seen that with CrossFit they had an upper category, but once they split it into upper 1 and upper 2, I thought, oh, actually, looks much fairer.
Right.
And I think, again, probably for a lot of the other categories as well, thinking, actually, I stand a little bit more of a chance here because it's going to be a bit of a fairer system. So I think it was new and different for adaptive athletes as well. And obviously bigger numbers, not just 5 people. Right.
Finding 10 athletes to compete against.
Yeah.
And then getting to meet more people and kind of just see the community grow and all of that. Yeah. So what was one of your best experiences from that season, whether it was in the Open, semis, or at the games in San Antonio?
It was definitely the games. The games was my first ever individual CrossFit competition. So day one of the games was, I don't think I've ever been so nervous. I've never been that nervous lining up for any race I've ever done. But yeah, I was so nervous. I just sort of didn't know what to expect. But after finishing that event, I don't think I've ever felt on such a high as I did after that.
Well, because you won it.
Well, I did win it, but I think it was the release of all the nerves, to be honest. I think it was like, oh, that's out the way.
Yeah.
And then the ice bath afterwards, and that probably has something to do with it as well. I was ready to go straight into event 2. I was like, let's go.
Did you win event 2 as well?
I did, yes.
Yeah. So I'm piecing together your story and kind of your results of the 2025 games. I mean, you guys had the mile run, right? After the row and the ski. So you got to kind of assert your skill set.
That's it. I think my expectation was to finish last on the machines. Yeah. I thought, the other girls are they're all tall. Most of them are taller than me. They're all, I think, heavier than me. So I thought, they're going to annihilate me on these machines. So I've just got to use the one thing I have, which is just run as hard as I can. Mm-hmm. But I came off the machine second, and I thought, actually, I stand a bit of a chance here. And then I saw Emily in front of me head off, and I thought, I can definitely match her pace. And I was like, I think I've got this one. And then I was a bit disappointed with event 2 because we had that thunderstorm and it rained, and they changed the sprints to a bike sprint.
I remember that. Oh, yeah.
I was so disappointed because I was like, this was my event. Because coming into the games, it was the only one that I thought I'd actually do quite well at because it's got sprinting in it. Mm-hmm. So I thought, this is my event. So when they changed it to bike, I wasn't really happy about it.
Yeah.
But I did fine on the bike. I am quite strong on the bike, but I'm not really heavy. which I think a lot of the ergs, the heavier you are, the bit more of an advantage you have. But I think it was picking up the sandbag and chucking that around. Just went as fast as I could. Plus, I just had a bit of an argument with my coach before we went on, and she was like, "You can win this," and I was like, "I can't. I just wanted to sprint." So I sort of had to prove a point.
That's nice. So real quick, so the CrossFit Games are happening this weekend, the able-bodied CrossFit Games, and yesterday was that run. Did you watch it? And did you watch Adler like take over Krennikov?
I did.
Or Krennikov or Ricky Gerard? Krennikov.
Krennikov.
Okay, that was just art.
Yeah. He planned that.
Yeah. What was that takeover in event 1 like? Did it happen in the middle point of your event with Emily, or was it kind of at the beginning? When did you kind of go, you know what, I'm going to take this?
I think I knew that I was going to take the event when I saw how many calories I had left on the ski when she came off.
Okay.
I was only about 5 calories behind her. Or 5 meters, something like that. So I thought, I'm going to be able to catch her on this run. And then the plan was to do a sort of recovery type lap as the first lap, which I did, just to gauge her pace and then to gauge the pace of the other girls coming off behind me, because one of the girls, Sabrina, who's from France, actually competed against her in the Invictus Games in sprinting, and she beat me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was like,
so that's sitting in the back of your head.
Yeah. So I was like, she's a sprinter. I need to make sure I work hard, because once she comes off the machine, she's going to sprint around here and try and take me. But when I came round again, so it was on the second lap, the start of the second lap. Emily was probably about 10 meters ahead of me. And at which point her coach was shouting at her, my coach was shouting at me. Hers was telling her to go faster. Mine was telling me to go faster and take her. And once I went round her, I think it was just that moment I was like, oh, I've got this, because I was taking it steady for a run. If I needed to go flat out, I could have done. I could have gone faster. So I thought, I've got, whatever happens now, I think I've got this one. So then it was just staying focused, I think.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. But it is a nice moment in sort of inside. You sort of don't want to be, you don't want to be mean and horrible, but at the same time, you're like, yes.
Oh, yeah, of course. No. And I think it's one thing. That's what I love about running, when running's actually in a CrossFit workout, is because you get to actually see that happen in real time, like passing somebody, versus when it's like, I didn't put the barbell down when you put the barbell down, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like that's dramatic in and of itself, but that the racing past each other just has a certain level of dramatics to it. That's really cool.
It does. And it has a certain amount of soul destroy to it as well.
Yes.
Because I've had it happen to me, like when somebody's gone past you and you just feel like your whole, like, oh no, especially if you're giving it your all and they go past and you're like, I can't match that. And so that when you've gone past them, that you've just broken them a little bit.
That's 100% right. I think that's actually the language the commentators used when Jeff Adler passed Roman Krennikov. Like, that's a soul crushing moment there.
Yeah, and it was the second time he's done that to him as well. I think that added extra burn.
You talked about your coach yelling at you on that run. What's 1 or 2 ways that your coach helps you, encourages you, trains you as an adaptive athlete?
So she always, when not in competition and when we're training, she always has very high expectations, like higher expectations than I have of myself. And I think that it combines into, I trust her completely. So I trust what she's saying and what she wants me to do, and I'll absolutely give it a go. And I don't want to let her down and disappoint her at the same time. So I think that really pushes me. But I think when you work with somebody for the amount of hours that we work together, when that translates into competition, in sprinting, she would normally leave me at the call room and I don't see her again until the end of the race, because she can't help me. Once the gun goes and you go, there's no helping you. You just run and the race will be what it will be. But in CrossFit, it's very different. So I've only really just started to learn to look for her in the crowd, to see if she's sort of telling me not to pick the barbell up again, or or she's, telling me to calm down, or because there's a lot of thinking time in CrossFit. It doesn't feel like it, but in comparison to sprinting, there's a lot of thinking time. And, I think you can get into your head, and just having that other person there that probably knows how you move better than you know how you move, it gives me a lot of confidence.
Yeah. And I think what you said about like looking for her in the stands, that's so interesting. I've never really thought about that. I wonder if my coach is listening to this and going, yeah, man, I wish you would look at me in the stands. But I think for so many of us, adaptive athletes, at least, like, especially adaptive CrossFit athletes, adaptive CrossFit is not that old. And so I don't think there's been enough reps, quote unquote, for us on a competition floor for many of us to get really dialed in on those sorts of little things, right? Like, where's your coach at? How are you communicating with your coach during a workout? I think the people who are constantly winning in their divisions in the adaptive CrossFit space have that dialed in. But I think there's many of us that are a bit more, I would say, amateurs in the sport that haven't learned that. And I think that little tidbit right there for someone listening might be super helpful as they're getting ready for the games this year in Vegas.
It's huge, because I think we get into, when we're competing on the floor, you get into your own headspace. And even though you have a bit of awareness of what's going on around you, where your competition is, I think sometimes just that look up and, it can be, she might be just telling me to relax a little bit because I'm fine. I don't need to go 1,000 miles an hour because we've got plenty of other stuff coming. Or it might be actually, get a move on because you're going to get caught if you keep faffing around. But I've certainly had it on a lift before, where I missed the lift and I wanted to lift again. And from the side, she was emphatically jumping up and down, telling me not to lift again.
Oh, gosh.
Because
so what'd you do?
Going straight. I didn't lift against what I wanted to do. I could feel every fiber of my body was like, I want to lift this again. But I listened and I didn't, and I did better in the second workout for it. So I think it's finding a coach that you trust, working with them, and just dialing in those extra little bits, game planning before you go in, knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are. And certainly, I think for me in the games last year, a lot of where I feel my success came from was staying in my own lane. And we games plan where I knew where I was good, where I was bad, and game planning actually what that workout was going to look like and just sticking to that.
Well, and that got you to a second place finish. So it's nothing to bat an eye at either. I mean, that's really well done by you and your coach. Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, we were certainly surprised. We went there to have fun and see what it was all about. But as a person, and I guess a lot of us are that are there, I am very competitive. So I always go with the intention, like, I want to win. But that wasn't necessarily it definitely wasn't the expectation to finish on the podium. It was definitely an extra bonus.
That's nice. So what are your goals, or what's one or two goals that you have for this year?
This year, I think I put myself in a difficult position last year by finishing second.
Hey, not everything has to be up and to the right. That's something I try and remind myself.
Yeah. And certainly with CrossFit, it's all going to depend on what the workouts are. But I think my goal this year was just to be better than I was last year. I look back at my performance across the board last year, not just in the games, but in CrossFit in general. And I compare that to this year, and this year I feel more like a CrossFit athlete. Last year, when I make the comparison, I've made so much growth. So I think for me this year, I just want to want to carry that growth across, and I want to see that I've improved as an athlete from last year.
Yeah. Yeah. That's huge. And I also saw on Instagram that you did the Adaptive Invitational with the British Functional Fitness Federation.
That's right. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because is that related to the IF3, the International Functional Fitness Federation?
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just the British arm of it. So I don't know how much you know about it, but of course, the movements are very similar to CrossFit, but the way they test is different. And their ultimate goal is to be a Olympic/Paralympic sport in Brisbane in 2032, I think it is.
Okay.
So that's the angle that they're going with. But yes, we did. So British Functional Fitness they want to include adaptive athletes next year. So this year they ran an invitational. They've invited 3 men, 3 women from different categories. And they've made it into a bit of a competition. We sort of compete against each other. But it's just to show off what we can do as adaptive athletes. I'm doing another event for them mid-August, which is their nationals, I think. But the pathway that they follow will be more, as we would understand, with a Paralympic pathway, which would be like a Europeans and then a Worlds and then an Olympics.
Okay. And they can't do, if I remember correctly from what I've read about IF3, they have to create some kind of a standardized test. It can't be unknown. Everything has to be on the table in some ways, right?
Yes. So I'm quite new to it as well, so I don't know how it will change. But the invitational that we did, we were on the floor for nearly an hour. So you start and then they test each modality. So the first test was strength. Then the next test was endurance. And then the next test is skill. So each WOD effectively that you do tests one of those things. And we were on the floor for the entire time. So we did our strength and then you had 12 minutes rest before you did the next WOD. And then
Interesting.
Then you had 4 minutes rest before the next one, and then 4 minutes rest, and then the next one. So we did five workouts with varying amounts of rest in between, but the longest amount of rest was 12 minutes.
Okay, that's great. I'm going to look that up, and if anybody listening to this is curious, also look it up. It's called the IF3, and I'll put it in the show notes, a link to that as well, because I think that's an interesting future for functional fitness, CrossFit, adjacent sports to 100%. Be able to sort of have a pathway.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I think they're the two sports that you can run side by side. You know, you can be a CrossFit athlete, you can be a CrossFit Games adaptive athlete, and you can do British functional or functional fitness as well. And it opens up some doors, I think, for maybe some of us that are this side of the pond. Because it is a little bit more, when it gets to the next level, it starts to go into the Europeans and then the Worlds. So there's a little bit more for adaptive athletes that are over on the Europe side, because we don't have a lot of adaptive competition over here.
Okay, can we switch to a lightning round?
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. So what is one goal outside of fitness that you're currently working towards?
I'm working towards buying my own home.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So I used to have my own home. I converted an old chapel. And then, but then I sold it to fund all my fitness aspirations.
Okay.
So now I'm working back towards owning my own home.
So did you remodeled basically this chapel to transform it into a home?
Yeah, fully converted it. So it was an old chapel when I got it. The pews had all been ripped out, but it still had the lectern and the pulpit and everything.
Stained glass
windows.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. That's awesome. And creepy. I would also be creeped out. I work in a church.
Graveyard.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I work in a church, and whenever I have to go there at night and the lights are off, I'm like, nope. What's your favorite way to spend a rest day?
So I do like to have ice baths and that sort of thing. So usually I'd probably ice bath, sauna, and then catching up with everything that I've not done in the rest of the week. So my rest days are a bit boring, to be fair, food prep, but also catching a bit of TV if I can, and catching up with my family and friends.
Mm-hmm. Nice. What's one of your favorite things to do, like when you're out with friends or family?
So I love a little bit of laser quest.
A what?
Laser quest. It's like paintballing, but with lasers.
Oh, laser tag. We would call it laser tag.
Yeah, laser
okay,
tag.
Laser quest. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's way cool.
So that's quite good fun. But again, it does tend to be competitive stuff. So a bit of crazy golf or stuff like that.
Okay, awesome. And what is your go-to pre-competition snack? How do you fuel for a 100-meter sprint right before the sprint? How do you fuel for that?
Just a couple of sweets.
Okay.
Yeah, not very much at all. In fact, before the race, I probably have to starve for like 2 days. Wow. So you need to be light for the race. So just enough energy, but actually on the light side. And
for CrossFit, what's your pre-competition snack?
So one of my favorites is peanut butter. So probably not just before I go on the floor, but I do like peanut butter and banana bagel will be like my go-to morning snack. But otherwise, like little fruit pouches.
Okay.
Look like baby food.
No, those are great. I stand by those. Yeah. All right. And then the final question, if you had control of the Spotify playlist at the gym, what are we listening to?
Oh, we're either listening to Meatloaf or we're listening to Queen.
Meatloaf? Come on now. Oh my gosh. Bad Out of Hell is the best record ever. I will fight people on that.
100%. I'm with you on that.
Yes. I didn't know I needed a rock opera until I got that. Yeah, it's amazing. And they're long enough as well to play the song. You should be done by the time he's finished singing. Yeah. Or if you're like doing a longer workout, like, oh man, like maybe next time I have to do like run a 5K or something like that, just put on that album because it's just going to take you there.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I love it.
Oh, Debbie, that is fun because like I grew up, my dad would put on classical rock all the time in the house. And, but I remember when I got older and I discovered the whole album of Bad Out of Hell. And I was like, Dad, why didn't you ever tell me that this existed? I knew them all as like disparate songs. And it was like, wait, it's a story. It's a story.
Yeah. And even like the videos that go with them, once you watch them, actually, it makes more sense.
When we get done with this interview, I'm going to go listen to Bad Out of Hell. That's Awesome. You also mentioned in the pre-review some Queen. What's your favorite Queen song?
I do like a bit of Under Pressure, actually, with David Bowie in as well.
There you go.
But otherwise, it's got to be We Will Rock You.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That's fun to get going.
That's some good music right there. That's some good music. I hope people listening to this enjoy the music segment because I feel like it gives me so much joy to know what other people are listening to, what they get hyped up for. Because I don't know, I just feel like that's so much fun. And music is such a part of CrossFit in some weird way.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think the louder it is, and it's something speaks to everybody, like to get you in the mood for a lift or to get you in the mood for a run. And I think there's something different depending on what you're doing and what mood you're in.
Yep, 100%. All right, 2 final questions. These aren't lightning round, so you don't have to rush through these. If someone's new to Adaptive CrossFit and they're listening to this podcast, what advice would you give them to get started?
I'd say to them to go down to their local gym or their local box, that it's not as scary as they think it is. Everybody will be super welcoming and everything is scalable and adjustable, and they'd be surprised at how much they can actually do.
Yeah. Were you surprised when you started CrossFit at how much you could do?
Yeah, I was surprised at what I could do, things that I thought I'll never be able to do that. And I think, the people around me, I could see them doing it, and nobody else there thought that I couldn't do it, which made me think, well, I must be able to do it. And it's helped me in my everyday life. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things, I couldn't get something heavy down off the shelf. Now I can lift, but I know I've got to lift that wall ball down if I want it, because somebody would help me, but my pride says don't ask. So I've learned to get it down, and and because of that, that's now something I can do at home.
Right.
So especially for adaptive athletes, it unlocks so many other things, in your everyday life, let alone just in your gym.
Yep. 100%. 100%. So if you could go back and encourage a younger version of yourself, what would you tell her?
I would probably say that when one door closes, another one opens, and that there's opportunities everywhere. So even though it might not look like the path you want to be on or the path you want to take, that you can take something great and something positive from whatever opportunities in front of you.
Before your injury in 2015, what did you think your life held for you?
I thought I was going to stay in the army for the rest of my life. And I had a community there, and friendships and a family. And I thought that I would progress through the ranks and become the best soldier I could be. That was my ambition. That's all I wanted at the time.
And then in the last 10 years, you just discovered a whole new thing.
A whole new thing. Yeah, everything's changed. I still have a community. It's just a different community. And I've probably done more with my life than I would ever have done had I stayed in the army.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, Debbie, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. I really enjoyed Debbie's story because it highlights all the things that are important about adaptive athletes, especially adaptation. After her injury, she had to figure out how to be athletic again, how to sprint with only one arm, and how to do CrossFit, how to trust her coach, and how to learn how to train. But one thing I really liked at the end of the conversation was when she mentioned her involvement in additional adaptive competitions, including the one that was put on by the International Functional Fitness Federation, the IF3. I realize that's a mouthful, but it is a really interesting federation that's trying to make CrossFit or functional fitness an Olympic sport, and is starting to explore what it looks like to make it a Paralympic sport as well. So if you're interested in that, we've got links to the IF3 in our show notes, and you can find out more about that. And that is also sort of a step in the future. There's some of you that may be listening or may know somebody that just needs to start CrossFit or needs to get into a gym. And that was Debbie's encouragement too. Take that first step. Get into a local affiliate, because we'll welcome you with open arms. And there might be someone that you know who needs the experience of a good CrossFit box. So thanks so much for joining us for the episode today. Be sure to like, subscribe, review the podcast, share this podcast with other people. Let's spread the word as we get closer to the Adaptive CrossFit Games. I'm Matt Hotho, and I'll see you later.